I've looked at them in more detail.
So, 88 pounds and on his
Okay, welcome to American Dream Garage. Today I'm going to do an update, although I'm not sure. I'll go back and look and see if I did some original video on the restoration of this car. But I'm standing in front of a 1970 Mercedes 300 SEL 6.3. I'll show pictures of the car where it's a little more presentable than it is here today. And then I'll show you pictures of what has been restored so far. I was working on this car starting a year and a half ago, working on the air suspension, which can be somewhat troublesome, and availability of parts is next to nil. I ended up having all of my valve blocks repaired by a guy in New England. It was rather pricey. Replaced most of the lines, replaced the bladders. I'll show close-ups of that. But I've got the air suspension working, and then I kind of did the rest of the suspension and put the car back on the ground, and there were three things. First, the brakes. I never bled them, so I wouldn't have expected them to be good. Second, the steering, when it was put back on, I had the main tie rod position wrong, and its turning lock to lock was not right, and that was perplexing to me. And then the transmission seemed to be slipping. All of those things together, after I thought I had it kind of back together and right, were very frustrated. So I basically just put the car in another room and covered it up until just recently. So I've got it back in. I've got the steering fixed. Basically, the steering pitman arm was hitting the exhaust because the adjustment of the individual tie rods was not correct. So I basically took about 45 minutes to an hour, got that fixed. I got to work on, I'm sorry, the other thing that wasn't working was the power steering. Power steering pump came apart when I was looking at the air suspension compressor. So anyway, I've got the steering fixed, I got the brakes bled, so now I'm down to the power steering unit and the transmission to get this thing back on the road. But I will show you some pictures and close-ups of where it stands, and if I can go back, I think I have some original videos I took but never published of some of the early steps with this car. Thanks. Okay, continuing the video on my Mercedes 300 SEL 6.3. I'm going to admit, I had said earlier that I was only going to go to a minimal level on the restoration, and I was going to replace the air suspension mainly, and probably the shocks. So I did pretty good on the front. So I've got the air suspension on this side, new shocks, you know, refurbished the A-arms and so forth. Cleaned everything up. This side is ready for the airbag. The one thing that, you know, if anybody else is thinking about doing this, it's very difficult. And these are chassis mounts for this suspension, main suspension brace. These are extremely difficult to install. It really involved almost lowering the engine to get this in here because it just was so tight. But these were significantly worn, and so I figured that it needed to be replaced. Then I've continued back. You can see that this is the transmission mount, and it is also worn, so I've got that coming. The exhaust had some pinholes in it, so I've got the exhaust coming. And then, you know, moving to the back, I decided that since I'd done all that and I was taking out these two rear airbags, that I would dismantle as much as I really could from a I guess ease perspective. These trailing arms are very difficult, plus the bushings are really in good shape. So I'm going to leave that, replace the shocks, replace the airbags, and then I pulled the gas tank and all the brake lines. So powder coated the gas tank, so it looks good. And then I've got the brake lines all up here, and they were all in good shape. I just took all the surface crud off of them. They weren't really that rusted, but they had various things on it. So anyway, remove the fuel pump and the brake boosters, and so get that all refinished and redo that. One thing that is very impressive with this car is I have not found, you know, other than some surface rust, I have not found a single bit of rust on this car. Not anywhere, any place, anything starting. I've got a couple seam seals that need to be redone, but there is absolutely no rust on this car, and I can, you know, say well into the future that this is a rust-free car. So pretty impressive. So anyway, that's where we are on the teardown, and today the rebuilding starts. On the things that I've done to the car, I cleaned up the wheel wells, really stripped everything off the back end, got it down to a new primer, cleaned up all the brake lines, the axle, put a new fuel pump on it, new shocks, new rotors. I rebuilt or replaced the calipers, new suspension bump stops. These are the air bladders, which are brand new. I reconditioned the actual housings for it, double checked all the lines. I cleaned and powder coated the gas tank, replaced the fuel lines, got a brand new stainless steel exhaust system, front to back, from inline tube. I got all new brake lines. You can see these are the suspension blocks that were redone, and they look very nice. Kind of redid and cleaned up and reprimed the floor, natural floor area, as well as re-undercoated. Moving forward, same thing on the front suspension, new shocks, new calipers, new brake lines, rebuilt suspension blocks, rebuilt or replacement bladders, reconditioned bladder housings. I redid all the tie rod ends, or replaced all the tie rod ends. Redid the A-arms, redid the sway bars, and basically reconditioned a lot of the other areas. So that's what's been done. So combine this with a car that I'll show pictures of, that's pretty nice overall condition. You know, I believe I'll have a pretty decent 3+, 2- car when it's all done, one that's extremely rare and quite collectible. Thanks for joining me. Stay tuned for future updates.